So I had this art I created for something called Dogman and Son, but the name seemed familiar. It was going to be a fictional story I was going to write. So I did a search on the channel, and it turns out I had done a 3-part episode called Dogman and Son that for some reason I'd made unlisted. Now maybe it's in a special or something, I don't know. I've been looking for it, I can't find it. Maybe one of you knows where this is and can tell me. But I started listening to the story, and it was so 2023 to me. It just seems so current. I really like the ideas in it, and I thought, well, this is much better than the story I was going to do. I should just use my art for this old story, which isn't really that old, and fix it up and give it a nice presentation. So I have some new visuals I just created especially this morning for this, and I hope you like it. It's a special presentation of the allegedly true story submitted to us about a year ago, well, a little less than a year ago, entitled Dogman and Son. Oh wait, I should warn you guys, this is an old school episode. If you're a newer viewer and you're used to our more quieter episodes, this is one of the old ones where the monster screams at the end of each part of the story. So the end of the second one, there's a jump scare that made me spill my coffee on myself, so I'm warning you ahead of time. Alright, and now on with the show. Dogman and Son. Dear Scary Stories, NYC. I've got a story. Well, actually, I have 3 stories if you want to hear them. They're stories about me, my father, a dogman, and the dogman's father. You might say I sort of grew up with that younger dogman, at least to some extent. First, I'd better explain my father, because he's the only reason this all happened to me. Dad was not sensible. He was too friendly to too many people and animals. He always assumed the best about everyone, even when they were obviously getting ready to screw him over. This is probably why we ended up living in a cabin in the woods and hunting for a living. It wasn't that Dad didn't want to fit in. It was just that nobody else wanted him to fit in. He was an original thinker. And nobody wants a poor guy who can think for himself. That's a dangerous thing to be in the human world. Let's face it, if you're rich, they call you eccentric. But if you are not wealthy, they've got a whole long ugly list of other words that they'll apply to you. If you're born into the working class, you're not supposed to think. You're only supposed to follow orders. So when even my mom left him, Dad raised me in the woods in Pennsylvania. I had learned to read when I still went to school, and I sort of self-taught myself everything after that. We had dusty old books in that cabin that I think had belonged to a previous owner, and I read them all from cover to cover. I always wanted to be a writer, and I guess I still do. I'm hoping to retire in 5 or 6 years, so maybe that can be the time for me to start writing finally. I tell you, your channel makes me want to write stories about these dogmen we used to encounter. I guess this email is the start of me wrapping my head around all those old Pennsylvania dogman experiences. There are a couple of pioneer cemeteries in the woods near the Tuscarora State Forest. Dad and I came upon one of them randomly in the late afternoon one day as the sun was beginning to set, and it was quite a striking scene. Some of the richer people had full-on tombstones, but others had much smaller rocks placed over their final resting places. If they once had names engraved on them, I suppose those names are now as much a part of the past as the individuals whose remains they mark. It was a humbling experience, and a weirdly saddening one as well. There was this heavy mood, as though we had come there to pass on or something. I didn't like it. I wanted to get out of there, but before I could say that to my father, out of nowhere came a small gray puppy, running right up to me, then dancing and jumping at my feet. I don't think I was more than maybe 13 at the time, so the puppy and I instantly started playing and became friends inside of 2 seconds. We were having a ball, and I could hear my father laughing at our acrobatics and antics. Then, something bellowed so loudly that my ears hurt, and my knees went weak underneath me. I had only ever felt my knees do that once before, when we ran across a mama bear, and my mind went directly to the idea that this might not be a puppy that I was playing with at all. This might be a baby wolf. I must be being roared at by a mother wolf. But wait, wolves don't roar, you know? So I was moving my eyes and my head to turn to see what exactly was making that terrible shouting sound. I felt like time had slowed down to an almost halt, and I wondered if this is what you feel when you're about to pass on. When I saw what it was making that sound, my knees actually did collapse, and I fell backward clumsily, trying to catch myself on a tree, but failing. I was sitting on the ground looking up at a very angry canine, but a canine that was standing up on its hind legs. That was a feat I was unable to manage just then. I got a good long look at that mama bear dog thing, and one of the things I noticed was that it was not a mama at all. It was definitely a papa bear, but it was also definitely not a bear. To me, that looked like an upright walking wolf, but the paws were somewhat more like bear claws. I'm not sure what to compare the claws to, honestly, as they looked like dog paws, but functioned more like human hands. Imagine bear claws with the final claw offset more like a thumb. Then imagine it looking somehow very canine. I suppose I'll have to get better at describing things if I really do want to become a writer. The short version of it was that I was looking up at the scariest monster I'd ever seen in my life. And my only question was in which way it was going to tear me apart. Was it going to stomp me out of existence? Was it going to bite my head off? It literally had jaws that looked large enough to do just that. I was seeing my short life pass in front of me. I was so sad about all the things I would never get to do. When I was sitting on the dirt looking up, that Dogman might as well have been as big as Godzilla. That's what it seemed like to me. And I was an ant underneath him. I flinched as I thought I was being attacked from the rear, but it was only my dad. He had walked up and leaned over to pull me to my feet. He whispered at me to be quiet, so I was. After I was standing again, Dad put his arm around me and I hugged him. Hard. The puppy excitedly and happily danced and pranced all around, jumping up on me in a playful manner. I held my breath because I expected to either be bellowed at again or possibly something worse. Instead, that Papa Dogman just turned around and walked away from us, emerging back into the woodline. The puppy and I returned to playing, and that night he even slept just outside our tent flap as though he were guarding us. In the morning, he was gone. My father told me that the Papa Dogman had come to collect him in the night. To my father, this was the time he was proudest of me. He lectured on and on the next morning about what an honor we had just received. That Dogman respected us as fellow hunters and did not treat us as prey, my father insisted. When he saw me defend you, and when he saw his son's reaction, he realized we were the same as him. We were just carnivores, out carnivoring. Dad had a colorful way of speaking, but you always understood what he was trying to communicate. Even as a kid, I knew he was a screwball, but I loved him anyway. There's no way he would be allowed custody of me in the modern world. He was just too much of an individualist. He was a very proud American as well, which these days they say is a bad thing. Dad was a man of his time, but he was quite a man. Who else would have let his son play with a Dogman pup? My father and I encountered that Dogman again, and his son 2 more times. Those are 2 more stories I can tell, although they might not be scary enough for your channel. I mean, I guess they're scary in places. I'm an extremely lucky man. I've had multiple encounters with that Dogman family, and I came away unharmed, and I feel enriched. How many people use a word like enriched when describing their Dogman encounter? But that's how I still feel to this day. about the time that my father and I encountered. Dogman and Son. We're quite grateful, if you can't tell, because of our EP Michelle. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer, Michelle Rich. In return, Michelle receives our secret uncensored Dogman stories far too wild to tell on this channel. YouTube changed something recently to severely limit our channel, and they no longer are serving our videos to people who aren't already subscribed. You need half your audience to be fresh, or else your channel stops growing and moves backward, which is what's been forced on us in the last month and a half. Teenage Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, thank you for your comments on my first entry for your channel, the story about the Dogman and his pup. Thank you for not doubting me or being judgmental. I've been looking for a safe place to get this off my chest for some time. So as I hinted at earlier, there were 2 later times when I saw that same puppy over the next couple years. Each time he looked more mature and taller. This is my account written from memory of the second of the 3 times we ran into each other. The next encounter happened in the fall, most likely late November. We were out hunting for deer, and that's when it's in legal season in Pennsylvania. In one area you've got state game lands number 67, 71, 73A, 147, and 215. Trust me, my father and I made maximum legal use of those areas and times. We'd always take down more than we could eat, and we'd sell the rest to afford our other expenses. Most years we actually lived fairly comfortably, considering our cabin in the woods had no rent or mortgage payments. Even in the lean times, though, we never starved. I don't do it anymore, as the only meat I'll eat any longer is seafood. I feel no guilt about the times we did it to survive, but I think that if I were to hunt now, it would be an immoral act. It was not murder when I innocently helped my father eke out a living, but I'm comfortable now and I don't want to end any more land animals' lives. I guess I've just become an old fool. As for sea life, I once got pinched by a lobster, so now my philosophy is screw sea life, you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I'll get serious. This story freaks me out a little, so I tend to start making bad jokes when it comes time to tell it again. My dad was always taking chances and bringing me along with him when he did. One of the ways we'd take unnecessary risks regularly was that we would stay out way too late and then be walking home through the woods when they were at their most dangerous. One night, our luck finally ran out. Dad was walking in front and I was trudging along behind him. We hadn't caught anything at all that day, which is why we had stayed out so much longer. Dad never minded hard work, but he hated doing it for nothing in return. Since I knew he was in a bad mood, I was staying quiet, and we were walking along silently. Something grabbed me by the neck and shoulder and dragged me into the bushes, throwing me down on the dark ground. Before I could call out to my father, I saw a world of teeth in front of my eyes. I wasn't sure who or what had grabbed me yet, but I knew that whoever it was had very large canine teeth, like dinosaur versions of dog teeth. So tall, so wide, that they filled my field of vision as this individual began growling at me in a very threatening manner. I was laying flat on my back, but wishing I could somehow sink into the earth and get myself away from those teeth. I'm not ashamed to admit that my body reacted as though this were the end. The creatures seemed to notice and reared back for a moment, affording me a better view of what this was. It was a Dogman, a dark gray adult upright walking canine. It was extremely tall. I'm a bad judge of height, but it seemed larger than a very tall man, possibly in the range of 6'8" to 8 or even 9 feet tall maybe. I thought it looked just like the Papa Dogman I had seen back during the summer. As I sat up and slid myself backward, away from the Dogman, I saw another canine approaching. It too was a combination of different dark gray fur colors, but this one ran on all fours and appeared about the size of an adult German Shepherd. When it saw me laying on my back on the dirt, its eyes lit up, its tail began to wag furiously, and it ran over, standing on top of me and licking my face. It was hard to breathe with that amount of weight on top of me, as this animal seemed to be far more massive than your average German Shepherd. Between that and the licking all over my face, mouth, and nose, I was hardly able to breathe in at all. Whatever this creature was, it sure seemed to like the taste of my skin. I somehow turned myself on my side, getting the beast off my chest. This left me lying there, breathing in and out through a pained chest and pained lungs. Even as I lay on my side gasping for air, the dog licked my face so enthusiastically that it kept making me choke. If this was how it planned on ending my life, at least it seemed more merciful than just tearing my throat open. On the other hand, at least I might go quicker that way. At any rate, I got myself into a sitting position at the base of a tree trunk, and I wheezed for air. The dog continued to dance around me as though something wonderful were happening. I could see the large, upright walking beast man further away, just watching the two of us interact. That was when I made the mental connection. Could these actually be the same two dogmen from the previous encounter? I looked a little harder at the German Shepherd-sized creature, and it did have the sort of face mask look around his eyes, as I remember that puppy having back in the summer. Could this be that puppy grown so large in a few months? Then it finally clicked in my brain that this was who it had to be. It looked like a fully grown dog to me, but it was only a teenager in terms of its development. That cute puppy was going to continue to grow until it was the size of its father, or even larger. It wasn't a normal dog. I mean, this should have all been obvious to me months earlier, but cut me some slack. I was still really young. These first two encounters happened when I was 13, and I had one final encounter when I was, 16. There wasn't any internet back then, and Daddy kept me out of school, so whatever I knew, I had to figure out for myself, and I figured this out for myself. I took a risk that I did understand what was happening, and I stood up. Holding my hands out in front of me, I made a noise like you make when you tell your pet dog to come closer. That canine raced to me on all fours, then stood on its hind legs and rested its arms on either of my shoulders, giving my face a big sloppy wet dog kiss all over for some time. Yep, this was the same couple of dogmen, all right. I called out to my father, and when I didn't hear him call back, I whistled our special secret family whistle. I could hear him arrive behind me amid a torrent of foul language. I guess he couldn't tell if I was calling him to rescue me or what, so I shouted to him before he drew his rifle and shot anybody. He saw that younger dogman, who was at that point around the same size as me when he stood on his hind legs, licking me all over, and he saw that daddy dogman watching the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if either of the parents looked at each other and shrugged. The puppy still remembered my scent, and the puppy also still clearly saw me as being his friend, on his side. His parents still seemed to be willing to humor his offspring, at least on this subject. Although he clearly didn't care for me or humans in general, the adult dogman was willing to allow his son to make his own decisions about who to be friends with. After saying hello for a long time, the teenage dogman and I started up a fearsome game of fetch. That dogman would leap over some bushes and crash straight through others, rearranging the forest in his wake, just in order to catch that branch that I had flung. My father came to stand closer to me, and we had a conversation each time the dogman ran off to chase my stick. Basically, Dad just kept asking me over and over and over if we could leave yet. Then, the younger dogman would race back, and my father would go hide in the woods again for a while. I just kept telling him the same thing. The game is over. When the Dogman says it's over, and not a minute sooner. Dad whined like those were my rules, but you don't make rules for a giant puppy. The giant puppy makes rules for you. So, we were playing to the point where I was becoming physically exhausted, when suddenly, the forest erupted in a loud, incredibly long howl. It was then I realized that I hadn't seen the adult Dogman for some time. I wondered if that was who we were hearing making that howl. If not, certainly it was another creature just as large. The teenage Dogman froze, and I listened. Then, without saying goodbye or even gazing in my direction, the beast ran off on all fours, in the direction of the sound. No doubt it was Papa ringing the dinner bell. I had been dismissed. You know, it felt like my dad treated me differently from then on. I think he saw that I was growing up, that I was starting to be able to handle situations on my own, even situations that he himself wasn't certain how to cope with. He shouldn't have been surprised, though, because he had raised me to take things as they came, and to deal with what you've got to deal with while you've got to deal with it. I am my father's son, and he made me who I am. Still, to this day, years after he's left us, I try to be the man that I think he would want me to be. I hope that makes him happy, as I wasn't sure that I always pleased him in life, and I'm not sure he agreed with my decisions regarding the teenage Dogman. The birds had Tippy Hedron. We have Fraggy Dendron. You need to smile and not act saggy when you get a comment from Dear Fraggy. Please join me in thanking Fraggy Dendron, who is not only our executive producer for today, but one of the nicest people in our comments section. Please be nice to Fraggy, as she's a big reason we're still around. In exchange for her support, we share various perks with Fraggy, including our secret uncensored Dogman stories, far too wild to ever tell on this channel. The Dogman took a mate. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I'm the guy who told you the stories about the Dogman puppy I played with, and then the second time I encountered him, when he was sort of a teenage Dogman or young adult. Both of those times my main fear was not him, but rather his fully grown and extraordinarily gruff father Dogman. The elder one was well over 6 feet tall, possibly over 7. I'm just not a good judge of height. The last time I saw the son, he was the size of an adult German shepherd, and mostly quadrupedal. What I mean to say is that he ran around on all fours like a normal dog most of the time. Once in a while, though, you could see the family resemblance, as this guy would stand up and walk around like a dog-shaped human being. The younger one acted as friendly as the friendliest puppy, but the father was a straight-up wild animal that clearly did not like human beings. He would allow his son to play with me, or at least we played together on those 2 isolated days that I've already described to you in previous emails. I had always had my father with me when I encountered the 2 Dogmen before, and in the same way, they had also been a father-son team both times. Fast forward 2 or 3 years, I was I think 16 or possibly 17, and I was hanging with my first serious girlfriend that we can call Marla. Marla and I met purely by chance when my dad got into a fender bender with her dad. I'd like to say I asked her out because she was so pretty and smart, but honestly, it was because she was the first female I'd seen that year under the age of 70. When you avoid the town and stay in the woods, you cut down your dating chances significantly. So Marla got me a job in town, which earned me some more friends and a wider world view. Dad and I just sort of naturally drifted apart. Instead of hunting for my food, I worked jobs and bought food for him and me both out of my paychecks. By that point, half or more of the time I spent in the woods was no longer hunting with Dad. It was strolling hand in hand with Marla. She enjoyed bringing me to her favorite places, and I enjoyed taking her on hiking trails and that sort of thing. Then, one day, we walked straight into a world of very high strangeness. Have you ever been walking along on a warm spring or maybe cool summer day, in love with your companion, each breath of air sweeter than the previous one, and then suddenly the day turns dark, like the sky's been blotted out. The breeze turns into a whistling wind, and the perfectly clear day becomes foggier than London in an old Sherlock Holmes movie. Well, that's what happened to us that day. At first I didn't mind too much, as it made Marla cling more closely to me in the wind. But soon, she pointed out a very large man, moving through the mist, seemingly approaching us. The man was unnaturally tall. Marla started breaking down and crying in my arms, which was not helping me focus my attention on what or who that was out there. I could occasionally make out the silhouette of an immense, muscular man. But then the fog would shift again, and I wouldn't see him at all any longer. At another point, I made out the devil-horned head and the two eyes, glowing almost white-hot, like coals, in its demonic skull. As cool as I had been a couple of years earlier when my father and I had those Dogman encounters, that's how fearful I was in that particular moment. I wasn't with my dad this time. I was with a weeping teenage girl, and I needed to pull myself together. I needed to be the adult in this situation for the sake of my girl, and I needed to regain control of everything before it got really bad for both of us. My dad taught me that most battles are won or lost before they begin, so posturing in front of your opponent can be the key. As much as I felt like crying and hiding inside a tree, I had to act as though I were certain I was the master of whatever was going on. I kept telling myself things in my head like, I got this. But, not exactly that. That's too modern a phrase, but you get my point. Affirmations, they call them now. I think I called it psyching myself up. I made my voice as deep as I could, and I stood as tall as possible. Then I shouted, "Hey, you! Get out of there, see?" Like I was, Sylvester Stallone or something. I waited for a while, Marla sniffling and whimpering behind me, and I could neither hear nor see any reaction at all from the large devil-horned man in the fog. After some time, I drew in a long breath and got ready to shout the challenge one more time. Before I could get out even one word, though, something huge tackled me and slammed me to the forest floor. Marla was screaming and running away as I lay there, more than a little bit stunned. It wasn't a demon, and it wasn't a devil either. The horns I thought I was seeing in silhouette were tall, pointed Dogman ears. I wondered if this was that adult Papa Dogman again, or if it wasn't, it sure looked like him. I tried to look around for his son, my friend, but this guy was rather large and blocked off nearly my entire field of vision. I was pretty big by the time I was that age. I was 6'2", I believe, and I was not finished growing either. With that Dogman over me, though, I felt like a small child in comparison. To say that this was an intimidating experience would not begin to describe it. The dog barked directly in my face with such force that it almost felt like I was being punched out by sound itself. But then the Dogman stopped barking in the middle of one bark and got the strangest look on his dog face. It was a kind of confused expression that I had never seen on any sort of animal before, nor have I seen it again since. Maybe it's better if I can't describe it exactly because I couldn't read its meaning in that moment either. He just stared at me with a look so confused that I kind of got even more scared than it would have seemed possible. Then, the dog quickly repositioned himself, so quickly that I couldn't even move an inch. Now he was out of my face, but he had his nose pressed into my lower belly. He sniffed vigorously as he moved his long snout around my upper legs, my belly button, my crotch, He spent a long time smelling my crotch, and I tried hard not to even breathe. I didn't want to do anything to disturb him while his nose and his immense rows of fangs were poised directly above the family jewels. If I ever get asked what my greatest fear is, I can answer honestly that my greatest fear is to have a dogman stick his nose in my crotch and then start to seem interested in what he's smelling. That's not where you want to be, believe me. So, that dogman was doing that kind of smell that animals sometimes do where their mouth hangs open a bit. I think it allows them to use more senses than just smelling through the nose. I have no idea what kind of information they can get out of using two kinds of smelling at the same time. Maybe they can suss out your social security number, I don't know. Judging by the rapidly changing expressions on that dogman's face, though, he was reading a lot of information out of those smells. The dogman then moved himself forward to put his giant, prehistoric-looking dog head right in my face, and I accepted that my time on the planet was now over. The dogman leaned down, sniffed my face one more time then, licked me vigorously, getting completely sloppy all over me. I was soon giggling, and the giant monster man and I were rolling in the dirt, not fighting at all, but greeting each other. This was not the father dogman, this was the son, all grown up now. The one I had first seen as a puppy, then as a German shepherd-sized teenager. Now he was every bit as large as his father, and I wondered if he was now on his own in the world. Almost as if in answer to my question, the beast leaped up off of me and raced into the woods. I wasn't even back up on my feet yet when he returned, this time with a beautiful white wolf alongside. I didn't understand at first that this was a female, but I soon figured it out through the nature of their interactions with each other. This was his mate. My dogman friend had grown, and now he was going to father another generation of dogmen. I felt proud of him in a weird way, and I wanted him to meet Marla. I called out to her in the woods. But this was real life, not a Disney cartoon from 1947. Marla was long gone. She had fled sometime earlier. That wasn't the last time I saw her, but it was the beginning of the end. It's probably just as well that I didn't get to introduce her to the dogman, as she and I turned out not to be as serious as he and his white wolf mate. I watched as the young dogman couple trotted off bipedally, then dropped to all fours and disappeared at great speed. They can move so quickly, through such tightly compacted places, it's a wonder any of us humans ever see them at all. If we ever succeed in catching a dogman, I bet it'll happen by accident. I don't think we're intelligent enough to outsmart them, not while they have the strength, the agility, and the eons of survival instincts that they have on their side. Now that last dogman experience had a sort of supernatural vibe to it. I mean, it started off with the dogman appearing in that unnatural-seeming fog, as lightning and thunder were off in the background. So people ask me if I think Dogman is from another world in any sense. Do I think it's supernatural or paranormal or from another dimension? Well, I don't know enough to say that it isn't, and I don't know enough to say that it is. The fact that I ran into it 3 times, and it seemed older each time, makes it feel like I was dealing with a natural animal that exists in the same timeline as me and ages like I do. That sounds real in the normal sense, not the paranormal sense. As for the fog in that third encounter, it might have been natural. Since fog is associated with Dogman in a number of other sighting reports as well, though, I wonder if that might be an ability of the creature, like a defense mechanism. He was walking with his mate, who was colored bright white, and therefore would be easier to see in the dark woods. Her coloring would make her more vulnerable out in the wild. What if the fog was the result of the dogman or his mate somehow creating their own cloud cover or cloaking? I know it's bad form for me to present that idea when I can't even guess how an apex predator would be able to auto-generate fog at will, but it did seem very convenient that it was there when it suited him and gone when he wanted me to meet his girlfriend. Then again, that might have also been entirely coincidental and just randomly convenient. I don't know enough to say for sure either way. So it's been many years since this all happened. I've never seen the Dogman again, but I'm rarely in the forest any longer. He aged from puppy into adult at a rate far faster than it would take a human being. Does that mean the Dogman's life expectancy is also shorter than that of a human? Maybe he's been gone for years. Maybe he's still around. I can't know either way. But I'm still very happy that I got to find out when the Dogman took a mate. You get an extra slice of spam in our Scary Stories rations when CS sees our program and makes a kind donation. Please join us in thanking CS for making this and so many of our other episodes possible. Using our brand new thanks button, CS has kept us going for another day. Our thanks go deeper than Loch Ness when we feel grateful to CS. We have a number of ways you can help, and just as many perks we can share with you in return, including extra secret episodes far too wild to ever present on this channel. Here to fill in the deets is international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.